This is Russia, and this is Canada, two of the biggest countries in the world. Oddly enough, these countries are rarely compared. That is probably because it's a fairly huge task. I mean, the total land area of the Earth is almost 149 million square kilometers, and Canada and Russia combined make up 19.43% of that. That is almost 29 million square kilometers, almost as much land as there is in all of Africa. Despite being seated at the opposite ends of the globe, Canada and Russia share a lot in common. From their vast land masses and cold climates to their resource-rich economies, these nations qualify as two peas in a pod. However, their historical paths and current geopolitical contexts have shaped unique national identities that set them quite far apart. There's just so much to unpack here, so let's roll. And so, this is Canada. It spans an impressive 9.98 million square kilometers. It is home to approximately 37.6 million people, with one of the lowest population densities globally, about 4 people per square kilometer. It has quite a diverse geography, which ranges from Arctic tundra in the north to beautiful forests in the central regions, and rugged coastline along the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Interestingly, Canada has the longest coastline of any country in the world, measuring a whopping 202,080 kilometers. Canada is also home to a substantial number of lakes, 31,500 to be precise. More than 60% of the world's lakes are found in Canada. The country is divided into 10 provinces and 3 territories, each with its own unique landscape and climate. Toronto is the largest city in Canada by population, with 2.6 million people as of 2023. Canada's highest peak, Mount Logan, is 5,959 meters. Located in Yukon Territory, it's part of the largest non-polar ice field in the world. And despite its vast size, around 80% of Canada's population lives within 150 kilometers of the US border, showing a significant urban concentration in the southern part of the country. As for Russia, it is a country of 146.6 million people, and it spans 17.1 million square kilometers, making it the largest and 9th most populous country in the world. I'm rather surprised to discover this, but that means the population density of Russia is around 8.6 people per square kilometer, almost double that of Canada. The vast expanse of Russia includes diverse landscapes, such as the Siberian tundra, dense forests, and extensive coastlines along the Arctic and Pacific Oceans. It boasts the world's deepest lake, Lake Baikal, and the longest river in Europe, the Volga. The country is subdivided into 85 federal subjects, with Moscow being the capital, and the largest city with some 13 million people. So that must somehow explain the difference in population density. Moscow is pretty massive. Somewhat similarly to Canada, around 74% of the Russian population lives in urban areas, and the majority is concentrated west of the Ural Mountain range, closer to Europe. The highest peak, Mount Elbrus, which is 5,642 meters tall, is located in the Caucasus Mountains. Approximately 1/5 of Russia's landmass is north of the Arctic Circle. Winters can be incredibly harsh. The coldest inhabited place on Earth, Oymyakon, is located in Siberia, with temperatures plummeting to a bone-chilling -67.7. This record was recorded in 1933. The Siberian Arctic is home to a variety of hardy species, animals like the Siberian tiger, brown bear, and the Amur leopard, which have adapted to live in this frigid climate. The region also supports a variety of bird species, including the snowy owl and the Siberian crane. Canada's Arctic regions, on the other hand, span approximately 40% of Canada's land area. It is similarly characterized by a tundra landscape, with a short growing season that supports a limited variety of plants. The coldest temperature ever recorded in Canada was in Snag, Yukon, where it reached -63 in 1947. Like Siberia, Canada's Arctic region is also teeming with wildlife, including polar bears, Arctic foxes, and caribou. Some species that are not found in Russia include the prairie caribou, found only in the Canadian Arctic archipelago, and the Arctic hare. From dense forests to rich mineral deposits, both Canada and Russia are blessed with an abundance of natural resources. While Russia's economy heavily leans on its vast reserves of oil and natural gas, Canada is known for its timber and mineral resources, including diamonds and uranium. But really, both countries have an abundance. Russia's oil reserves are approximately 80 billion barrels, making it the world's 8th largest. It is home to the world's largest natural gas reserves, accounting for about 25% of the world's total. Russia has the world's 2nd largest coal reserve, with an estimated 157 billion short tons, primarily located in Siberia and the Far East. It is also rich in a variety of metals and minerals. It is the world's largest producer of diamonds and palladium, and ranks amongst the top producers of gold, platinum, nickel, tin, and zinc. The country's forests cover an area larger than the entire continent of Australia. Canada has been similarly blessed with abundance. It is one of the world's leading mining nations, ranking amongst the top 5 global producers for gold, nickel, aluminium, and lead. The country is also the world's leading producer of potash, used primarily as fertilizer, covering approximately 3.47 million square kilometers. Canada's forests account for 9% of the world's total forest cover. Home to the 3rd largest oil reserves in the world after Saudi Arabia and Venezuela, Canada is a major player in the global energy markets. The country's oil sands in Alberta hold approximately 165.4 billion barrels of bitumen, a heavy viscous type of crude oil. Natural gas is another significant energy resource. The country is the world's 5th largest producer. Furthermore, Canada is the 2nd largest producer of uranium, providing about 13% of the world's production. Interestingly, while Europe's dependence on Russian energy is used as a weapon by Russia to increase its geopolitical power, it is also creating a rift between Europe and Russia, especially since Ukraine. The US and Canada relationship, on the other hand, is overall bolstered as their trade relations are remarkably good. Interestingly, Russia has a lot more large settlements past the Arctic Circle, like Murmansk and Norilsk. These are major population centers, with hundreds of thousands of people living there, whereas Canada doesn't have anything that could be called a city that high north. The only reason these settlements exist, of course, is resources. So the Russians seem to take resource extraction to a whole new level, and have to, since their economy really depends on it. Unlike Canada, which can afford to let the free market take care of itself. Canada is very much characterized by its multiculturalism, but Russia, on the other hand, well, it is also very multicultural, if not more so. I mean, you can't conquer that much land and not swallow up a ton of ethnic diversity. According to the 2010 census, there are more than 190 different ethnic groups and indigenous people in Russia. Russians, of course, are the largest ethnic group, making up about 80% of the total population, which makes it feel less diverse. But the sheer variety of people is astounding. Each has their own unique language, traditions, and culture, while Canada's multiculturalism is a bit different. About 21.9% of the total Canadian population are immigrants, making Canada one of the countries with the highest per capita immigration rate. You could argue that Canada has more language diversity, since English and French are its official languages, while Russia only has Russian, and 80% of Russians identify themselves as such. But on the other hand, most of the foreign ethnicities which make up Canada are very Western, in my opinion. So from this point of view, it's very difficult to make a comparison. While the indigenous cultures of Canada and Russia are distinct, they share some fascinating similarities. Both have profound connection with land and nature, which is deeply ingrained in their traditions, beliefs, and lifestyles. They have had to adapt to harsh climates, leading to unique practices and innovations. Both cultures also share a rich oral tradition, passing down stories, knowledge, and cultural values. While Canadian indigenous cultures have been influenced mostly by European settlers, Russian cultures have been shaped by various Asiatic influences. Interestingly, reindeer herding is not a traditional practice in Canada's Arctic regions to the same extent as it is in some areas of Siberia and European Arctic. Instead, many indigenous communities continue to rely on hunting, fishing, and other traditional activities. As Arctic nations, Canada and Russia have vested interests in the northernmost reaches of our globe, so both countries are actively asserting their sovereignty over the region. Their interests are primarily driven by the potential economic benefits that come with the exploration of natural resources and shipping routes. For instance, the reduction of Arctic ice could pave the way for increased commercial shipping, particularly through the Northern Sea routes, which could significantly shorten the distance between Europe and Asia. Similarly, Canada has the Northwest Passage through the Arctic Ocean, connecting the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. However, it's less developed and remains difficult to navigate due to unpredictable ice conditions and inadequate infrastructural support, like ports and ice-breaking services. Additionally, Canada asserts full sovereignty over the passage, creating potential diplomatic issues. On the other hand, Russia's Northern Sea route is comparably more developed and commercially viable at this moment. The route running along Russia's Arctic coast from the Kara Sea to the Bering Strait is heavily invested in by the Russian government, with well-equipped ports and a robust fleet of icebreakers. However, the route's viability is heavily dependent on Russia's geopolitical relations and policy changes, which at the moment are shaky at best. Now here's where the two are significantly different. Canada's democratic tradition has roots in its colonial past, evolving into a robust system that respects civil liberties and ensures political stability. Unlike Russia, where power has often been centralized in a single leader or party, Canada's political system is built on the concept of power sharing. The federal government, with its 10 provincial and 3 territorial governments, share jurisdiction, which ensures that power isn't concentrated, and that different regions and groups have a voice in governance. The peaceful transition of power is another notable feature of Canada's political landscape, unlike Russia, which has seen periods of political turmoil and power struggles. This is a testament to the strength of Canada's democratic institutions and the respect its citizens have for the rule of law. Canada's strong commitment to civil liberties is another distinguishing characteristic. This stands in sharp contrast with Russia, where civil liberties have often been curtailed or compromised. Also, Canada has a long-standing reputation for its commitment to international diplomacy and peacekeeping. It is one of the founding members of the United Nations. When it comes to the Russians, it's a much longer and darker history. It's almost impossible to compare. As I like to say, Russia has the Soviet Union, and Canada has maple syrup. But either way, it's quite fascinating to look back a little and see the parallels with today. During the Russian Tsarist era, which spanned from the 16th century until the early 20th, one monarch or Tsar would wield absolute power. The Tsarist era is often characterized by its autocracy and serfdom, with a great divide between the ruling elite and the majority of the population. The Tsarist era came to an end with the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917, marking the beginning of the Soviet Union. The ideology behind the Soviet Union was communism, which sought to eradicate social classes and distribute wealth evenly amongst its people. Kind of the opposite of what Tsarism was all about. But oddly enough, it still kind of had one person at its helm the whole time. After all, Lenin and Stalin are regarded as legendary autocrats. So this Soviet Union dissolved in 1991, leading to the formation of the Russian Federation. The post-Soviet era has seen Russia grapple with its new identity. The early years were marked by economic instability and political upheaval. However, under the leadership of Vladimir Putin, Russia has seen a return to global prominence. And while Russia tried out democracy for a little while, well, it seems now it was all just an act, or a geopolitical disaster, as Vladimir Putin likes to say. Canada, on the other hand, is known for its generally peaceful foreign policy, and has not been traditionally associated with military invasions of other countries. It's most often recognized for its contributions to peacekeeping missions. Wars, not so much. And possibly most important of all, we have to talk about the difference in economic disparity between the two countries. As we have established, both have the same amount of luck, with a somewhat similar share of natural resources. Russia probably has the lion's share, with various types of treasure hidden in the vastness of Siberia. But this has not led to the average Russian prospering. Russia's GDP per capita is $33,000 per person, while Canada's is around $60,000. This means that Canadians have on average almost twice as much wealth as Russians. And I suspect calling an average Canadian twice as wealthy as a Russian is putting this disparity very mildly. The distribution of wealth in Russia is also far more uneven than Canada, with a small number of very wealthy people and a large number of people with very little. The richest 10% of Russians control more than 80% of the country's wealth, while in Canada, the richest 10% of Canadians control about 40% of the country's wealth. We could, however, argue that Russians can stretch their money further and have a higher standard of living than Canadians, with the same level of income. But how great is that when you try to have a holiday abroad? Overall, the quality of life in Canada is generally much higher. This is no secret. It's been like this for many years now. A newborn baby in Canada can expect to live to be almost 83 years old, while a newborn baby in Russia can expect to live to be only 73. This is a significant difference. So yes, autocracy, tsars, how is that working out? Not great at all. Especially when you end up being sent to the front line in Ukraine. Maybe you could watch my video on Ottawa, it's the capital of Canada. Not many people actually know this. And this is my Patreon map. Everyone on this map contributes to my channel directly. Thank you all so much. GeoPerspective out.